Bukola, I have this one.
And as we head to our next conversation, it ties pretty much into it because we're talking this time around about the economy. And Mr. Paul Alaje, the founder, SPM Professionals, joins us from our Abuja studio. Mr. Alaje, good morning and welcome to the Morning Brief.
Good morning and thank you so much for having me.
Let's begin with what appears to be topical right now and somehow is related to the price of LPG, which I believe is also a byproduct of, petroleum. And it's the crude oil price conversation that has been impacted by the war in Iran, for which there appears to be some stability now after the agreement reached between the U.S. government and Iran. So naturally, there are expectations that back home that it will impact on the pump price of petroleum. I'd like you to weigh in on that and what should be the expectations as far as the revamping of the economy is concerned. And I'd like you to also speak to what appears to have been Nigeria's profit from the increased price of crude oil in the last 6 months.
Yeah, thank you so very much for having me. Very good morning to you and your colleagues in Lagos. The agreement between the American government and the Nigerian government has since impacted on the price of crude. We have seen reduction from above $100 per barrel to around $80, $90 per barrel. That is where the range is. It's much expected because the price jump was as a result of instability and future expectation in price. Back home, we expect price of PMS, LPG, diesel, and all other byproducts to come down. But we might not see that on the immediate because in economics, prices are sticky. In the immediate, we can see some gradual reduction. What can make that happen very sporadically is supply. And when I say supply, I'm talking of volume and I'm also talking of options. Consumer becomes supreme or consumer is a king when he has options. Options mean we do not have a sole seller, we do not have a sole provider, we have multiple channels from which we can buy. So for us at home, we know we have our peculiar challenges. Perhaps the sole provider of PMS, diesel, and so many other products in Nigeria today is Dangote Refinery. That does not mean that others don't have some form of production that they do. But when we talk about significant production, and this is not to criticize what the refinery is doing, this is a wake-up call, which I've mentioned since 2019 till today, that we need to have provide reasonable competition before the refinery came on board. Now the refinery is here. How do we ensure that we have competition to improve supply, to even make that refinery more efficient? And clearly it's not going to be government-owned refinery. Because I remember I was interviewed, I think by this show or the show after, a number of years back, when government celebrated that our own refinery are now back. And it was more like shaming some of us that says that do not solely rely on government refinery, except it's going to be managed purely by private individuals. Why we do not gloat? Because I will never gloat. A month after that refinery was celebrated, I'm wondering if we can have a 1 liter or a bottle of Coke of PMS come from that refinery as of this morning. My point is, we need private sector refinery to be multiple in our country, why we don't kill the one that is saving us right now. And people have said, oh, maybe we should turn to importation. My approach to importation has been very clear. It is not bad to say we should turn to importation as we have been advised by some international organization. But my worry is that Nigeria's currency, the Naira, is very sensitive to importation in volume when it comes to what we need. And the truth is, if we import and there is a exchange rate volatility like we have seen, also supply volatility as we have seen in war between America and Iran, we are only telling the local manufacturer that the market can buy, you can also increase your price. So the best approach to all of this is for us to look inward and produce. Look for more supply, to produce. I understand that there is one other refinery coming up to the stream. I wish government will provide all necessary support to any other person, just as we have supported and we have seen the benefit of having our own local refinery to work. What is the gain on our economy? The gain should have been price and also output. Revenue is not complete when you have only price and you don't have significant output. Ordinarily, as a nation, we should be doing not less than 2.3 million barrels, and that is just being charitable. But when you look at the numbers, we're not doing up to 2 million barrels a day. We're not doing up to 1.6 million barrels on the average a day. What does that mean? We wasted the war that could have benefited us, that could have helped us in revenues, which would have spent to improve schools, we could have spent to keep our hospitals, we could have spent to increase the volume of our road, we could have spent to empower our military to combat ongoing insecurity that we're experiencing in our country.
You talked about, okay, Jeff, you have this next one.
Yes, I wanted to dwell on this because we're talking supply here. Supply, two things primarily. Supply is on one hand, which whenever there's disruption, it causes even demand destruction itself. And demand destruction can only happen when there are alternatives. So that's on one hand. And then the other part has to do with the devaluation of our currency, which you rightly pointed out that is very, very sensitive. So I was looking through the refineries that are functional in Nigeria besides the Dangote refinery. We know the Walter Smith modular refinery, which has, I think they do 5,000. They have a capacity for another 50,000 because if they, when they commissioned the 5,000, they flagged off the other 45,000. So it should be 50,000 in the nearest future. I don't know what it is now. So as far as refining capacity is concerned, we're still building, and whether it can supply, we can be able to satisfy the local market. The data will speak to it. So why I decided to bring all of this in is that the market is deregulated. Deregulated, keyword. So what should Nigerians begin to look at in current terms? Because sometimes it looks like we may still be lost in the subsidy era, and this government has moved on from that era. So we always have this back and forth. I don't want to jump into the politics. I'll talk to politicians when it comes to politics, but I want you as an economist to look at it from the point of economics. How should we be prepared to always respond to issues around the energy sector because it is deregulated?
Okay, I think that's a very nice and very fair question. First of all, when you look at how you started your introduction, you spoke about one of the modular refineries that has installed capacity of 5,000, and in future it will have about 50,000. Economics is not just about future, it's about what are we consuming today. While economics has macroeconomic parameters, microeconomic parameters affect you and I the most. We can look at the macroeconomic parameters, say what's happening to unemployment, what's happening to inflation, what is happening. But when it comes to you and you alone, you are going to decide, am I able to eat? Can I afford to take myself to hospital? Can I have quality education that will make me at least interact and do business so that I can earn? Can I get decent jobs? These are critical questions you would ask. So for that installed capacity, is different. That you have capacity, it does not mean you will use the whole capacity. And I talk to you as a parts manufacturer, as a person. That is why I need to underscore that. That somebody had 5,000 capacity does not mean his production today is 5,000 capacity. If it does, then we will feel it in the market. But we are not feeling it as it is. Now, you spoke about, the truth is that government has made it very clear that subsidy era is gone and we are not going back to it, at least for now, as we have seen it. Now, when you look at subsidy era, both in FX market, I'm talking of foreign exchange, I don't want to lose any viewer, and also in the petroleum market, we have seen that subsidy is gone in those regards. What does that mean? The government is not providing kind of support to reduce costs for people. Now, what does all of this mean? It means that government wants to achieve a few things. One, stability in the market or relative stability. Number two, government wants to take the monies they were using for subsidy, and I'm talking under ideal circumstance, that such money should be taken into other critical infrastructures, other expenditure. Now, all of this is expected to help a nation especially has been advised by some key international organizations to achieve stability. Now listen, stability is never the goal in economics. Stability is a transition period. What that means is when a country says that, oh, I am achieving stability, I'm having GDP growth rate between 4 to 7%, I'm having inflation reduced from, say, 30–40%, which of course is peeping or looking at hyperinflation right there, and I'm having that converge to less than 10%, say 6 to about 9%, and in some countries 11% to about 13%. When you start having all of those, you are having some kind of convergence, and you can have some reflection of stability, and your currency is not hovering beyond 1% or 0.5%. 0.5%, that's the distortion. We can say you have stability. But what is the real goal in economics? The real goal is ability of human being to have decent life. And that talks about standard of living. What that means is that for an household, what you earn will be enough for you. You will not see that stability is also inducing poverty. And not my figure. World Bank says about 7 million people were added, I think last year or so, to the poverty bracket. Does that mean that government intentions are not right? Or does that mean that we are not connecting enough? Does that mean that some of these gains that we have made from removal of subsidy at both fiscal and monetary windows, out of the subsidy we have removed, why is it that we are still having poverty increased instead of having some marginal reduction in poverty? I'll tell you. Key areas that all of the policies should impact directly. One, we should have major boost in export, and I'm not talking about marginal boost in export. Major boost in export. Two, we should have major addition to infrastructural improvement. Three, we should have more enrollment in schools and provision of quality education for our people. Number four, we should also have improvement in healthcare, which will be measurable in the quality of availability of instruments that we have in hospital, quality of minds, and pay to those who are now managing those equipment. I'm talking of medical doctors, I'm talking of nurses, pharmacists, and all of those things. Workers that are doing the job, especially private sector and those in public sector, they should feel that even if there is no increase, and I want Nigeria Labour Congress to listen to this, because oftentimes I've argued, it's not just to come and fight for more wage. The one you have, you need to fight for economic transformation, such that what you earn will be enough to take your children to school, to feed your family, and what we make all of those. And I will start bringing all of this together now. Will be one, quality rail system. Very importantly, because for most countries that we look at, and most countries that is getting it right, you cannot remove quality rail because of cost of transportation. If you look at your cost component, look at what you spend on transportation. Two, housing. Can we have decent housing, especially for the poor? What housing we do is we create a lot of jobs for people who we even think are street urchin. Because when you have a house, perhaps you have an architect, you have engineers, but who are the people that carries the block? Who are the people that mix cement with sand and what have you? The carpenters, virtually most people. Because when you say poor people, where do you find them in the pyramid of things? You see them at the bottom right there. And many of them are not professors in university, they are not PhD holders, they are not master degrees holders, they are not even BSc holders, even though there are some first degree holders that we've seen in that bracket. But when we now rejig the economy and look at what should be our priority as a government, and I'm speaking to the state governors and the state assemblies, and most importantly to the federal government, the president, the leaders of our country, the Senate, House of Representatives, top politicians in our country, those that we have elected in office. What we should look at is how do we prioritize real estate. And when I say that, I'm not saying building, massive building, no. I'm saying low-cost housing. Partner with some real estate firms all around Nigeria, perhaps any state, or pick them geopolitical zones. How do we have arrangement at state level with them to provide low-cost housing? Not just because of the house at the end of the day, also because of the jobs that it creates, also because of how it's going to wind the economy and ensure that there is progress in economic activity, which is what many people want to see. Thirdly, we also need major infrastructure, which of course we have seen some of them in a few places. We need to expand this and make sure the impact is more sporadic. That is when people will say that the gain of subsidy removal, we are seeing it in jobs. The gain of subsidy removal, we are seeing it in housing, we are seeing it in ownership, we are seeing it in roads, we are seeing it in all of those. But the most important thing, perhaps, for 230 million people, the most important thing to all of us, to you right there in your studio in Lagos, and to me here, and to that person watching us on YouTube or watching us on television, is when will power be relatively constant? I know many people have said, I mean, international organization, of course, most of the reports I've read over time will be complete deregulation of power supply will be the way to go according to them. But perhaps I have another opinion.
Mr. Laji, I'm sure that there is an abundance of recommendations on what the administration should do, even though the administration is itself also reporting progress on many economic indicators in reduction of inflation, capital importation, if you like, elimination of ways and means, stability in the foreign exchange. But you said something critical earlier on. You said the ultimate, as far as economic is concerned, is the well-being of Nigerians. And so, less than a year to the general election, it's good time to pass, to give a pass mark or a fail mark as far as the economy is concerned. From where you stand, what is your assessment of the success or otherwise of the administration on a scale of 1 to 10? How has it done as far as the economy is concerned?
Now we are here again. I try not to use numbers because what I say is really very weighty and very important. You suffer me not to use any particular number this morning, but I will give Nigerians the hint that we need. Number one is, if you are going to say you are better off, then you need to look at your income. Is it buying more things today than it was buying before? Remember that government increased minimum wage for 30,000 to 70,000. The question you ask is, for your minimum wage, can it buy you more food? Can you buy, how often can you afford what you need, the basic thing that you need? Like rent, what was rent before the minimum wage was increased, and what is house rent? And for most of your viewers, I know you have a very viable X-handle. They can put it in the comment section to say, the rent in my apartment was this before, this is the rent now. A loaf of bread before minimum wage was increased, what was it and what is it now? Because look at this, you have children in school, and for most people, it's not private, it's private school, not public school. And this is why I said the conversation Nigeria Labour Congress must be having with our government should be, we need public school. And this public school is not even, I mean secondary and primary school, it's not even the federal government thing. Mostly state government and local government. Can we make this school decent? Can we make it where people can learn? So you're right about the school you are taking your children to. Is it better off in terms of school fees and the quality of education they are turning out? So loaf of bread, a sachet of pure water, air tickets for the rich, because they are part of our population too. Is it cheaper today? Is it better tomorrow? And not just absolute cheaper. I'm talking of relative cheaper. Relative to your income. That is how you measure if the quality of life, that is what you earn, is even improving compared to what you were earning before. For some, yes, it might, but for majority, I doubt. So, but the numbers, I don't want to just quote, say that, oh, it's worse off, it's better off, it's good. I'm saying, let's set up a pool and ask questions that is non-partisan, that is non-tribal, that has no religious coloration, so that we can objectively say that these are the things that the outcome of what government is doing. At the end of the day, it is Nigeria that will grade our own government. And having done that, we also need to now put recommendation. What can we do differently? To my mind, some of the recommendations are the things I think authorities and leaders of our countries should do. And also, I'm not speaking just to government, even those of us in private sector should do to make our country a better place for people to live.
Well said, Mr. Alaji. Always bringing your recommendations. And I'm going to dwell slightly on where I started from with my question. Deregulated market, free market, in fact, they call it managed floats. I think the CBN at some point came out to say maybe in just about 1 to 2, at least for less than 5% in terms of intervention. So we've seen some level of discipline and seriousness with the current CBN. although the distance between the inflation numbers and the interest rates is worlds apart, and there's a clear explanation to that effect because of the approach of this government. However, you've always talked about the misalignment between the macro and the micro in this sense. Their argument is always, it takes time. It's like they're saying this was someone on literally, the economy was literally dying. So first is to save the life, and you just tell the person from the bed, jump straight to run in an Olympics. It takes a gradual process. So when you hear those kinds of argument that has to do with timing of when the gestation period has to happen to when the fruits will be seen, how do you respond to such argument?
Well, I totally don't agree with that argument that we have to wait till eternity before we start seeing impact. Late M.K. Abiola of blessed memory, he said, and I quote, "If you use 20 years to rehearse madness, when are you going to practice it?" So for me, I think we need to be really very sensitive. Before subsidy was removed, we should have planned as to what would be the safety net for the most vulnerable in our society. But that was not done at the beginning. The next question will be, for the middle class or for those that are barely living above the poverty line, recall that we have over 140 million people that are living below the poverty line. But numbers also shows that we have tens of millions that are living barely above the poverty line. So what should we do for them today? What do they need? What impact do we need to give? What can we help them to reduce in terms of impact so that what they have will be very sufficient for them? So I don't think that we need to say, oh, how long will it take? I've had an interview that went viral at a time where oftentimes people say that at the end of the tunnel, there will be light. The question is, are you sure that there will be generator to power the light for you to have light at the end of the tunnel, even though you've traveled through the tunnel? Therefore, what I mean by that is to say that we do not need to wait for donkey years. The plan of what government is doing and the intention, good intention government has should be made open to Nigerians. You need 5 years. If you are saying time, then we have to put a timeline to it. In 5 years, you will take you from this point A to point B. What that does in economics is it gives people confidence. But I think beyond all of these conversations, why the impact is not felt by many, and we can see it in the numbers. We can see inflation dropped to below 16%. We can see unemployment on 1 hour basis around 4-5%. We can see GDP growth about 4%. We can see all of these numbers.
Mr. Alaji, I do not, my apologies, I do not want to cut your trail of thought, so because of time. So, in addition to, please don't forget what you were trying to say. Nigeria is sitting around the poor and lower middle income category as an economy. When you look at per capita income as released by the numbers that are released, whether it's the MBS or the World Bank, I think my critical question is Nigeria ready for a neoliberal capitalist economy?
You have just jumped into my next line of thought. Now, readiness is an important factor. And what makes us ready is our capacity to be productive. Productivity is what you need in a liberal, in a capitalist, or in a new liberal capitalist market. Our ability to say we are ready is measurable by volume or level of our productivity. And when I say productivity, not just at macro level, but as individual persons. What drives productivity? What multiplies productivity is electricity. What drives productivity and multiplies it is infrastructure. And we've seen some quantum infrastructure going on in Abuja and some part of Lagos, by the way. And I've seen that in a few states, and I can speak for about 15 states that I've personally visited in the last 6 months. And as an organization, we've measured the impact of this on the economy. Now, we need to translate all of this into impact, into productivity in people's life without any political connection. So here is it. No matter what we do, and we are doing some level of work here and there, if it's not impacting on cost, it's not impacting on people's productivity, many people, and I mean many part of our population, Nigeria today, we see it as we are suffering, it's having negative impact on us, and all of this. To my mind, I think what
let me just quickly get this one in. You're an economist, a brilliant one at that. So if you were to chair the administration's economic team and inevitably these reforms, had to be implemented, you're saying that, we don't require donkey years to see result. What timeline would you be giving Nigerians for the actualization of the gains of these reforms?
Now, for the kind of reform we made, we need minimum. We need a minimum of 4 years, a maximum of 10 years to have complete transformation of our nation. That is what we need. And transformation will come when people start feeling that we are better off, irrespective of what we earn. We are better off today than where we were coming from. That is why people will not look back to prefer the past to the future that is offered to them.
So by now, this is about the 3rd year of the administration. So somewhere around next year, we should have been seeing the gains of the reforms of the renewed hope agenda of the government.
You don't even wait to the 4th year. No, you don't wait to the 4th year to start seeing the gain with subsidy removed, with devaluation happen. By now, we should have had abundant supply of food all over Nigeria, because that will take us between 9 months to 18 months for major harvest and food supply to happen. By now, we should have had some level of improvement in power. And what does that mean? Even though we are doing between 4,000 to 5,000 megawatts, what we should have had significantly by now, if some of those impacts are plugged directly back into energy sector, and government says, oh, we are not going to provide any kind of support again for energy sector. We can say that though the whole country may still not have, what do we call it now, constant power supply, but we could have gotten some zone, some production zone out of the entire bottleneck, instead of lumping everybody together and thinking that suddenly power will be better. Again, when you look at rail, I think to a large extent, we need to start seeing state government discussing with the Nigeria Railway Corporation, putting part of their vote to connect, to ensure that those get to their places, and we are seeing some improvement in rail. And that also has to do with housing. We do not need 4 years for us to start bringing low-cost housing to majority of the population. I don't know what rent is in Lagos, but I can tell you that it's not smiling in Abuja.
So there we have your answer to an assessment of the economic performance of the administration. So we see it somewhere in your non-committal status. Based on what you have said, we should be asking more questions about why we have not seen gains of the economic reforms of the government. Mr. Paul Alaje is a senior economist, SPM Professionals. Thank you for coming through on this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, so many questions there about importation, economic performance, and all of that. But it's a never-ending conversation, and that's why we'll be back again tomorrow to ensure that you remain informed. Thank you for coming through, for being there on this one. Sunrise Daily is up next. We'll be back again tomorrow. I am Bukola Koka.
And I'm Jeffrey Uzoma. Bye-bye.